tip. Coming all 3 speakers. Good honest reviews, book shows, and the movies all getting featured. They all getting featured. Said it's Tanesha's tip. Coming all 3 speakers. Coming all 3 speakers. Good honest reviews, book shows, and the movies all getting featured. Yeah. It's your girl Tanesha, straight magic. The greatest book reviews, let's get at it. She not here to offend, she just honest. Bringing words that may leave you astonished. And plus she do shows. She cover all like hands, knees, and toes. Don't lollygag, no, she just roll. Then it's on to the next one, on to a fresh one. Said it's on to the next one, on to a fresh one. Tanesha's tip. Coming all 3 speakers. Good honest reviews, book shows, and the movies all getting featured. Said it's Tanesha's tip. Coming all 3 speakers. Coming all 3 speakers. Good honest reviews, book shows, and the movies all getting featured. Yeah. Hey. It ain't for the clout, it's honest. See the truth when you look beyond it. Book shows, not to mention movies. She give or take in a great way, you'll see. Check it out, see if you agree. If you vibe, guess it's meant to be. And baby, you don't even need the script. Learn it all with Tanesha's tips. Tanesha's tip. Coming all 3 speakers. Yeah. Good honest reviews, book shows, and the movies all getting featured.
Hi, and welcome to Tanesha's Tips. Finally, today we're going to review Reasonable Doubts, episode 3, season 1, and it's called 99 Problems. Okay, so of course the opening scene is Jax going for her morning run. Then she goes into the kitchen after she's done up or whatever and ready for work. She's in the kitchen prepping the kids' lunch. Lewis runs in. Obviously he's late, and he looks as if, okay, wait, I'm running late or whatever. And obviously she's like, you're late. The kids come down and she speaks to Spencer and said, good morning, Spencer. And he's been a little asshole that he's always been since the beginning of the show. And then Naima comes down and she says, good morning. But then she says, Mommy, my stomach hurts. And so Jax, going down a list of things, and she asks her, maybe it's gas, the typical thing, she's not thinking anything else about it. And so she says, well, if you're hurting later, give me a call and we'll figure it out. So as as she keeps getting them ready, getting the lunch ready or whatever, Lewis ends up saying, well, why don't the kids come and stay a few nights at my house? And first she was like, no, but then she was like, yeah, that might, maybe not. But then of course Spencer was like, yeah, we're going to stay with dad again or whatever. But he used some choice words and some bad language that he shouldn't even be using. And so she was like, watch your mouth or whatever. Anyway, they went ahead and went on with their work day. Of course, Lewis wanted to talk, but she was like, we already talked. There's nothing else to talk about or whatever. So they let it go and kept pushing. So anyway, Rich, Daniel, and Jax, they all show up at Braden's house, right? And Sarah answers the door, and Jax introduces everybody, and Braden comes down the stairs. And instead of him letting Sarah stay, which, Sarah is the wife, he tells her, oh, we're going to just talk about a couple of things or whatever. Now, as she leaves the room, Jax asks him, does she know everything that's going on? He said, well, I just told her to ignore some things that she hears in the press or whatever. And Jax was like, no, it's very important that she knows everything that's going on. We need her to, put up a united front, because if she walks away, that means that she feels like you're guilty, and that can sway, the judge and the jurors. So he says, okay. And then they go in and they, discuss some things, right? So Jax is, letting him know, okay, well, this is what is going to happen, and you're going to probably do a preliminary trial. And basically it just helps us prepare for what's next with the trial. So in the next scene, Jax is outside on her patio smoking. that's her favorite pastime after, everything is over for the day. She gets a text from Will, which on her phone it says the security guard. So we know that that's Will, old creepy guy that don't know how to go home and take a hint. Anyway, so instead of her, answering his call, she calls Lewis, the husband. They have such a weird dynamic that it's just like, are y'all gonna be together? Or y'all not? What is y'all doing? It's just too much for no reason. But anyway, so she called him and she was like, well, I really don't want to talk. I just wanted to call to let you know that yeah, I want to take you up on the offer for the kids to stay a couple of days, right? And so then they do their little friendly banter or whatever, and laugh and joke and everything. And before they get off the phone, she asked to speak to the kids. And Spencer's sitting there, but Naima is not there. He says Naima's, still having a stomach ache or whatever. And so she says, well, did you ask her if she had a bowel movement or whatever? Again, she's doing that whole thing that, the mothers do to figure out, you gotta do the process of elimination. I mean, it's very necessary because you don't want to overreact, right? So he was like, oh, I didn't ask her all of that or whatever. And she was like, well, you might want to ask her that. He said, okay, I will, right? So again, Spencer, he tries to get Spencer to say something to his mom. He says, hey, and he walks off. So clearly something wrong with Spencer. I'm like, y'all need to get, tune him up a little bit because he tripping. So anyway, scene 4, Jax is out with the girls. And she's so preoccupied with everything. Like she's just staring into space and everything. And finally, the girls are cackling amongst themselves, and then someone looks over and says, you babysitting your drink or whatever, what's going on with you? And she says, I'm just so engaged in everything that's going on with this Brayden Miller case or whatever. And so her friends was like, oh yeah, he guilty, and they all have their theories and stuff. And so her friend Chanel, the one that revealed that her husband was cheating on her, she decides to say, well, they're always trying to lock a black brother up or take him down when he's up or whatever. And my husband said that these chicks will say that they sleeping with you and whatever they can do just to get in your good graces or whatever. And so Jack starts cackling, and she was like, did he write that speech for you? And as soon as she said it, all the other girls was like, no, don't say it. But Jack's not reading the room, and friend Chanel got, she got quiet and didn't say nothing else or whatever. And soon they all got ready to go. She was like, y'all know I'm joking, and this, that, X, Y, and Z. Girl, she wasn't going to take it like that, and you weren't really joking either. Because y'all know, they be saying jokes is a little bit of the truth. So anyway, they end up leaving or whatever, and in the next scene, this is so wild. Rich and Jax, they was walking off the elevator or whatever, and they were trying to talk about next steps, and all of a sudden, Fallon was like, yeah, that's Kalisha's cousin or whatever, and she has some choice words to say to Jax because, last episode she had told Jax that she wished she could do more, and she actually gave her a name of recommended her to another public defender or whatever, and they was coming up with a truce or whatever. But at the end of last week's episode, Jax decides that she's going to represent Brayden, and last we heard from Fallon, she was calling her a B. You B, this is what she said, okay? But she said it, y'all. So anyway, Fallon told her, after going back and forth or whatever, and actually Jax shutting her down really nicely because, she was in her office building, so she couldn't get crunk with or whatever. But Jax invited her to dinner and drinks to discuss everything. Fallon said, well, I hope you paying. And Jax was like, okay. So she walked off, and I guess she felt better for the time being. Anyway, the next scene is Sarah and Brayden. They're at the house. The police came with a warrant or whatever, and they ransacking the house, right? And they looking around like, what is going on or whatever. So I'm like, you had to know this was gonna happen. So anyway, then they start breaking stuff, and Brayden yells in the house, that's very expensive. It's a one of a kind, some, rich people stuff. I don't know. We don't know. And so Braden was getting upset, and he, finds a black cop, and he says something to him, and the black cop says, listen, don't give them no reason, just, go with it or whatever. They just need one reason to do anything or whatever. We know what he's saying. So, which it kind of sucks because, obviously the black cop knows what the black man is going through because he's in one and the same basically. But it's so disheartening that, they can't do anything. Everybody's hands is tied or whatever, but they know what's up. That's crazy. So anyway, the next scene is Damon. His PO then came to his house or his room, I should say, because he in the halfway house, and he decides that he's gonna go through Damon's stuff because Damon's last drug test came up inconclusive, right? And Damon says, I don't do drugs or whatever, and I don't have anything in here. And he was like, well, something is going on, and I'm going to, see to it that I find it. Well, he just ransacked the place for no reason. He didn't find nothing, but he said he was going to find something. So then Jackson makes it to the office, to her actual office, and Crystal, she asks Crystal to make reservations for her and Fallon, right? Then Jax gets a call from Braden, who tells her that, hey, the police came through with a warrant and they're ransacking his house. So he says, oh, goodness, I'm on the way or whatever. So then Jax calls Lewis, and Lewis asks why Jax asked Lewis why he took Naima out of school early. And he was like, you knew that? She was like, yeah, I keep tabs on my kids even though, I'm working or whatever. And he said, well, she didn't feel good, so I end up taking her out of school or whatever, hoping that, she gets better. Give her something and hope she feels better. So she says, okay, well, please let me know, keep me informed, whatever. He said, okay, I will, no worries, right? This is when he was supposed to go and ask her if she had, bowel movement or whatever. So anyway, then as she's still trying to get out the office to go get to Braden, then Damon calls her and tells her that his PO then ransacked his place or whatever and all this stuff. So she decides she's going to tell him, I can't deal with you today, but I'm going to come to you tomorrow. But what I can do is try to get you a new PO. I'll call you back later. Okay. So he says, okay, that seemed to placate him. So then we get to the end of the night, and Fallon is trying to meet up with Jax at the dinner place, right? So Fallon thinks Jax is selling out as before, and she called her a coon because she said, when we last talked, everything was copacetic, and you said that you wasn't going to be helping. So Jax let her know, listen, at first it wasn't a criminal suit, but now that she's deceased or whatever, it is now a criminal suit or whatever, and he hired me. My firm was already on there, so I'm just trying to do what I do, for my firm. So anyway, Jackson's like, well, listen, I'm not finna go back and forth with you. Did you go to the PO that I referred? She said, I fired everybody because I don't trust you at this point. And Jackson's like, okay, cool. She said, well, there's nothing else for us to talk about. And she left money and she walked out. So that was that. So then the next scene is Jax, Rich, and Daniel. And they are going over the timeline of events in the office. And they see some gaps and something ain't right or whatever because they figure out that with this schedule of events, there's no way he could probably do it, but then it would be tight. And let Daniel tell it be tighter than these girls getting snatched up at the waist. I don't know. He made some little reference or whatever, and he's just so awkward that they're uptight in corporate America that they can't even laugh. But he's really funny because he's like quirky or whatever. So Rich went to talk to Theo to see, if he could find out any more about, Kalisha's like scheduling her whereabouts or whatever. And Daniel went to do some more investigating. So then the next scene, Fallon is shown at the DA's office, DA Ortiz. And she thinks that the DA's office needs to do more to put light on the victim and not so much as the person that's accused, right? Because she said that everything in the news has been about the accused instead of the victim. And so, of course, the DA is like, we're doing everything we can, and, you got to give us time or whatever. But she also, brought up the point that, what about, these people? And she listed like 3 other black women that, their case is still open, and he made excuses for those, and assured her that they had nothing to do with what, her cousin's case. Whatever, child, say what you say, because it is what it is. So anyway, she said it's always an excuse, and she left out. So then the next thing is Daniel shows up at Kalicia's place. And when he shows up, he's dressed as a repairman because, he got to go incognito. So there is a landscaper there, and he's Asian, and so is Daniel. So when Daniel gets out the car, he asks, I guess, if he can have access, and he tells him he's a repairman or whatever. And as he's talking to him, he knows the guy doesn't really say anything. So he starts talking like Mandarin or one of the languages that's native to them. And the guy ends up, speaking. And he ends up speaking a lot. Now, within this interaction, he tells him a whole bunch of stuff. However, he also is kind of racist, right? Because he says, he refers to, I guess, Kalisha as the black. She's one of the good blacks or whatever, right? And so Daniel is looking like, oh my goodness, right? Like, okay, I'm going to take it for what it is, whatever. So anyway, after that interaction, Daniel makes it to Jax's office to relay the information. And he lets her know, hey, I had to be real racist in order to get this information. And she was like, okay. So he was like, okay, but it is what it is. And she asked him something, and he said he liked something about BBLs or whatever. And as he said it, another quirky joke. Crystal walked in and looked at him like, what? Just like that, like he is, very annoying. He like get embarrassed. And as he had said the BBL thing, Jack said, I could have went my whole life without hearing this or whatever. But again, it was comedic relief. And then Crystal came in and said, you need help, basically. And so he's like, oh goodness. Anyway, so Crystal leaves out. She gives a folder to Jax. And Jax gives Daniel yet some more information or some more tasks to do to investigate. But before he leaves, he asked her, have you talked to Crystal yet? Have you asked her out? And he said, oh no, she is busy or whatever. And she says, oh, so that means you haven't asked her out yet. She said, you need to get some courage and ask her out. So Daniel does have a little crush on Crystal. He's just scared of her, which is a mess. Anyway, so then we pan over to the auto repair shop with CJ, which is Damon Cook's brother and Damon. And so this is when Jack shows up. CJ sees her first, and of course he goes over and try to flirt. And of course Damon was like, He gets up and he says, hey CJ, you remember Jack? She used to be my PD or whatever, public defender. He said, oh yeah, you was fine then, you fine now. Do you like fufu? So he wants to take her out to eat. And so she was looking at him like, no, that won't be necessary or whatever. And some kind of way they make it out of there or whatever. And so she just says, I need to talk to Damon. So Damon talks to her and she tells him, hey, I got you a new PO. I'm going to see what I could do or whatever. But I want you to, stay on the straight and narrow, whatever. But I'm going to call you later. As she always say, she going to call him later or whatever. So anyway, he, has to tell her how she's so good and thank you and I appreciate it and all this other stuff, with them eyes on her, whatever. Okay, Michael Ely. But anyway, anybody ask me. So anyway, the next thing is Jax is at her mom's house and she's going through the old files and stuff. And she is trying to remember like everything about the case that she had with Damon back in the day. She just, wanted everything to be fresh so that she could do him a service instead of doing him an injustice, right? Her mom comes in and it's so funny because she has her own take on, what's going on with the Brayden Miller case. And she got it all like, her whole scenario is so funny or whatever, and she thinks, one way. And so Jax is entertaining her and she thinks it's funny and she's like, how you figure? And, they having a good banter. It's a good day for banter because it's just her and her mom. So anyway, as she was as she was talking to her mom, her phone rings and it's Carson and he's the news reporter, right? So he tells her, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. There's a video of Kalisha and Braden that's going to break in 10 minutes. And she was like, oh man, why you didn't tell me? He said, I would have told you earlier, but something happened and I couldn't or whatever. So she says, okay, thank you. So then Jax shows up at Braden Miller's house, right? And as she shows up, him and his wife Sarah are getting into it and she's storming out the door. And she was like, I ain't about to do this. Well, Jax ends up stopping her and bring her back in the house and telling her, listen, I understand what you mad at him and I would be too. I can't tell you what to do with your marriage, but at this moment we need you to like play nice with him, because if you leave him, it's going to make him be guilty of, what happened to Kalisha. If you stay, I can't tell, and he gets off, I can't tell you what to do with your marriage after that. So she was like, okay, I'll stay. Girl, I don't know how these people be doing it, but they be doing it. I don't know. I might say they better than me because I don't know if I'd be able to do it. Or I'd just be like, you better sleep with one eye open. But because I said he should sleep with one eye open, she did a better one. She told him that he was going to be sleeping in the guest house. I ain't mad at you, girl. I've probably been like, you might need to be further away from me than that, but that's just me. Anyway. So then Rich ends up meeting with Theo, right? And they're at some kind of restaurant, right? And for some reason, Theo, he really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He just kind of, But anyway, as they're talking and he's, Rich is asking Theo about Kalisha, he kind of comes off as though he really didn't like her that much or whatever. Then he also mentions misappropriated funds or whatever. And he said that he tried to ignore it more. I guess he tried to ignore it until he couldn't. And Rich asked him, well, okay, when you found this, did you tell Braden? And he said, yeah, but he kind of swept it under the rug or whatever. And he said, again, I tried to ignore it, but then it was going to mess with our bottom line. Now, I get it because Theo and Braden are partners. So basically, if the company tanks, he's losing money too. So yeah. However, I guess he thought that she was in, it was tainted. He said he didn't even know that Braden and Kalisha had anything to do with each other until this happened. But something tells me that's a lie. But anyway, and also he mentioned Braden didn't say anything because he felt like he didn't really fit in with other black people, and Kalisha was the one who introduced him to the urban community using black girl magic. And that's when Rich was like, huh? And so he said it, and then he said, like Jax be parading around here all the time. And so when he said that about Jax, then Rich was like, oh, what you not finna do is this. And when I tell you he put him in his place, I said, well, okay then, Rich, go ahead and do it then. But that Theo, he came off a little racist. Anyway. So the next thing is Jax, she in a car. She trying to rap and she all off beat. And I don't even know what song she was rapping, but she thought she was doing something. Anyway, then there was a text that came through, and that was from the girl Chanel that she kind of shut down at the restaurant on accident. She was joking about her husband. And then it flips to Lewis and Naima. Naima was calling her dad. She was in the bathroom. She was calling her dad. And he came to the door and she says, Dad, I'm bleeding. And he says, you need a Band-Aid? And she said, no, down there. And he says, oh. So he like, oh my goodness. He was like, okay, so I'm going to call your mom or whatever. But before he goes, he asked her, how you feeling? Or, are you hurting? Do you need something to, X, Y, and Z? He was like, I'm going to call your mom or whatever. So he said, but before I go, he gives her like a water tissue and tell her to put it where she need to put it, right? He was all tripping or whatever. So he calls Jax. Jax was headed to court or whatever. She missed the call. So, of course, Lewis panicking. So he ends up taking her to the hospital. Because he don't know what to do. I give him that. He don't know what to do. But he warmed my heart when he was asking her, if she was hurting all the questions that, you should ask. He was trying to be sensitive, so that was really good. So then they switched to the court, and the Ortiz is questioning the police guy or whatever. And then Jax gets her turn, and she asks, did you interview the assistant that actually broke into Kalicia's car? And he said no. And so she was like, why didn't you, interview? He said, well, she didn't have anything to do with it or whatever. And so she was like, well, you've been on the force for like 17 years, so why wouldn't you, interview everybody involved? And he made up something, but that's when the DA was looking like, oh Lord, yeah, they got him. Anyway, then we flip to the doctor's office, and the doctor is asking Naima if she would put on a robe for her or whatever. And she also asked, would you like for your dad to step out or whatever? And so Naima says, sorry, Dad, but I need you to move out. And so he was like, okay, he got out. So the court was transferred to, they end up getting a trial. And Jax was telling Braden, okay, listen, we got to prepare for trial, the next steps. He was like, well, what could happen? She said, well, you get 15 to life. So he looking like, what? And so Jax is like, I need you to trust me or whatever. Sarah is behind him, and she visibly pissed, okay? She just like seething. You can see it on her face. If looks could kill. But anyway, so as they were walking out or whatever, he tries to grab Sarah's hand, and Sarah walked past him like, I know you didn't. So they walk out, and Fallon is out protesting, and she's trying to get, keep the word out about Kalisha. She want to keep her forefront or whatever. She said she gonna get it done herself. You ain't gonna do it, I'm gonna get it done. So anyway, we switch back. Jax finally makes it to the hospital or whatever, and she was like, she asked Lewis, why you didn't call me? And Lewis said, I did. And she said, oh yeah, I was in court. Because he was like, yeah, you did say that, right? So then they find out that Naima has started her cycle, her period. And they were like, isn't she too young? Now, it is young. She's like 10 years old, so that's young. But the doctor was like, no, with all the hormones and everything in the food, this is, a possibility. But what we can do, we have options. Now, I didn't know they had options to stop it. Where we been? Can you do it now? I mean, I'm just saying. Anyway. So they make it home, and Jax has the whole female talk with her or whatever, the mother-daughter talk or whatever, so she'll know that, hey, you got to expect this every month. And she asked, she said, well, so Spencer never had one? And she said, She said, that's not fair. She said, girl, I know it, right? So anyway, Louis sitting over in the corner, right? And he laughs, and he, giggles or whatever. I'm glad y'all can giggle, but that was right. That ain't fair. So anyway, but then Naima asked two very important questions. She said, so does this mean I can get pregnant? And then she said, but how? Ooh, y'all got to get to explaining some things. My dog tore my other microphone. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so as they were coming out the bedroom, Louis, he was saying he never thought he would be explaining, sex to his daughter or whatever. And she said, yeah, she said that was very uncomfortable. So anyway, Jax asked Louis if he wanted to stay and watch the Clippers game, and that was one, team that they could both root against or whatever. And he said, no, I don't want to. I'm gonna go ahead and go home. This has been a very trying day or whatever, right? It really has. It was a long day. And so they compliment each other on how, good parents they are or whatever, and then he left. Okay. So then Jax is reading old notes and journals and having a cigarette, unwinding for the night. And then she ends up calling Damon. Of course she called him at night when it's so inappropriate. But anyway, so then she tells him again that she found him a new PO or whatever. And he says he's very appreciative. All right. So after that, Jax ends up going back into Naima's room, and she, picking up clothes and everything. And then she sees some soiled underwear, and she asks Naima, how long have you been, going through this? And she just was like, And she says, well, why did you come to me? And she said, well, you've been very busy or whatever. And she said, oh, I'm never too busy for you. Please, always tell me. And she give her a hug and she, leaves out. And when she leaves out, she's like in this zone, but she like about to break down. So it does end up breaking down on the couch or whatever. And then Lewis watching her on CCTV as a creepy guy as he is. Like, that is just so creepy. Like, is you gonna be there or what? Like, what are we doing? Anyway, so then we go back to the auto repair shop, and Damon sees his brother CJ making some kind of exchange with somebody, and he goes over there and he says, what are you doing? He was like, I ain't trying to go to jail over some crazy stuff that you're doing or whatever. And he was like, how do you think I paid the light bill when you was in jail or whatever? So that's that. See, so he got mad and he left, threw Damon the keys and left. I guess you ain't gonna tell him what to do, right? He trying to do what he gotta do, I guess. Anyway, at the end of the day, we switched back to Daniel, and as I told you, he had another assignment from Jax, and the assignment was to trail the old assistant of Kalicia's and find out what she's been up to. He finds out where she's at, and she's at the corner pawn shop with her boyfriend. They about to pawn a laptop. So he makes an agreement with Jax that he's going to wait till they come back out or whatever. He's going to buy the laptop after they finish. Well, she tells him, be very careful or whatever, but instead of him being careful, he hops out the car. They come out, and she's like, why are you following me? And then they end up beating him up, okay? And so they jump at him or whatever, and he never got off the phone with Jax or whatever. And Jax on the phone, Daniel, and she like, oh, and then it's gone. It's over with, and that's how it ended. So now we got to see what happens to Daniel and if he made it through. So thank you for watching the recap of Episode 3, Season 1, Reasonable Doubt. Please subscribe, comment, and check out the next episode.
And plus she do shows. She cover all like hands, knees, and toes. Don't lollygag, no, she just rolls. Then it's on to the next one, on to a fresh one. Ha. Said it's on to the next one, on to a fresh one. Tanesha's tip coming all 3 speakers. Good eye.